What is going on? I am Johnny Von Duke and you're watching Disney Channel. What the fuck? Feel that clanking? You feel that clanking? You hear that? Sounds some good dice. Dungeons and Dragons is fun. I started with 5e. Not the best edition ever to start with, but let's be honest. 5e is just friendly. You can axe half the rulebook and it works just fine. Man, that really is how a lot of D&D games go. It's like just chop the rulebook in fucking half. Just fuck all that shit. Not really. God, I remember when I first played the Icewind Dale for the first time. That was just fucking murder on my soul. Not even for the fact that it was the Icewind Dale and it was brutal. Just for the fact it was my first D&D campaign and I just... It was an adrenaline rush, man. The emotion. Even though we didn't even get a quarter way through the campaign. Which is the worst part still. We didn't even get a quarter of the way through that fucking campaign. What is going on, everybody? Johnny Von Duke here. And I am basically just going to be talking about Dungeons and Dragons for a little bit. Because, boy, I don't know what it is. I misplaced my my dice bowl for the longest time now. We've been on a hiatus from D&D. I misplaced my dice bowl for the longest time. I finally refound it. And oh boy. The memories just came flooding back, man. It's like an adrenaline rush. But we're not here to talk about the good memories. Well, we could talk about a little bit of the good memories. Like, man, I remember one time I just straight shield charged the fucker out a door. Just into an open field. I threw my shield out the fucker. Oh, it was glorious. There ain't nothing like shield rushing a guy out a fucking door and taking the door with him. Big old Epernese buff orc woman just fucking murdering your ass. Glorious. Glorious. But there's another moment then where my one friend who is a half orc, this time, oh my god, just took his javelins, man. Just shoved it up this bear's ass. Dungeons and Dragons can get wild. Speaking of asses, I played Curse of Strahd recently before we went on our hiatus for like... I don't know how long this hiatus is going to go. It's been a month and we keep saying we're going to restart playing, but we haven't yet. But there is this one part in Curse of Strahd where you're in like this murder house or something. I forget what it's called. I think it's actually called the Murder House amongst the fan base. But it's like, you get into this dungeon thing in the murder house. And there's like this zombie vampire I don't know what it's called. I think it was a ghoul or something. And it had this red mask on that like gave it powers or some shit. My character, I decided it would be funny to take that mask off of the ghoul and then shove it up the ghoul's rectum, so to speak. His rear entrance, his ticket to Mars. That's the front. His ticket to the moon, so to speak. His moon. Unfortunately, when I ripped the mask off, he disintegrated, but I wish I could have shoved that mask up his ass so bad. I wanted to shove that mask up his ass. I just wanted to, man. I can't help it. I just wanted to. The DM was looking at me sideways, but I couldn't help it. I just wanted to do it. That murder house broke me, man. There is so much fuck shit in the murder house of Curse of Strahd, it ain't even funny. Psycho House? Honestly, we could call it the Psycho House. I like that name. But that's kind of a ripoff of the actual Psycho House from, well, Psycho. But man, what is the bad things about 5e? Now, I want to state some. This ain't even complaints about 5e. These aren't even really complaints. These are just moments in gameplay that it's just... Why did that happen? Why did I need to make this judgment call? Why did I as a player or a DM need to do this? Why did this dumb fight afterwards happen? Yeah, if you've been long-time Dungeons and Dragons players, I'm pretty sure you've been in situations where afterwards it's just like... Why'd you do that, bitch? Just sabotage us? Did you purposely fucking rob that shopkeeper? Ah, man. Like, there are a lot of moments, like, afterwards where you're just looking at the dude like, the fuck, man? But it's just like, a lot of times it's chill. It's kosher. You're just rolling dice, doing the good old numbering and fingering. That numbering and fingering action. A lot of times it's good. But then there are bad moments. I'll never forget. Don't ask me how long into DMing this was. I've really only been DMing for about 5 months now. But it's like somewhere around month 3 of starting to DM. I just had a disaster moment. It wasn't even a disaster. It was just, and this is the thing. If you're short on time and you do these weekly meetings, there are going to be just times where gameplay fucks you in the ass. And the rules just fuck you in the ass time-wise. I forget what the object, and I'm sorry about this. I'm not going to be able to recall what a lot of objects and shit was called in the moments. This is a very much off-the-cuff video because I remember these things, man. But we had this box that could basically summon large predatory cats. You get what I'm saying? Your pumas, your tigers, your lions, just large cats. And they wouldn't aid you in combat, so to speak. They were just there. And you could summon them. It was a good distraction or a good way to get large numbers on the field and just, back up. Don't get in the sight of the large cats and you'll be fine. But you see, it went on for like a set amount of turns. I think it went on for 4 turns. And each turn, you would roll like a, I can't remember if it was a D20 or a D10. And you would establish how many cats spawned out of the box. And then they stayed there for a few hours. Which in combat takes forever. It just takes forever. So, by round 4, I have my one player, technically, has 50 literal cats on the field. Somewhere between 25 and 50 cats. That's what my brain is making me remember. I should have pulled up my notes for this. I have the notes for this, but I'm not pulling them up. But somewhere between 25 and 50 cats. So, keep in mind we're doing online D&D, so there's a little bit benefit there. I could just quickly pull up apps on my computer and have it help me with the calculations, like it's nothing. Even though that still takes time, let's be real here. So it's just like, I am sitting there like, there are 50 cats that I have to roll for, because they were my players, technically, but it was literally stated I, the DM, had to roll for them and not the player. Even though I had the player rolling to help me out. So it's like, we just got to a point where we had to group up groups of 10 of the cats and just roll majority, basically. It was fucked. Like, listen, I didn't like making that judgment call. I didn't. But it was like, it was taking us 30 minutes to get through the cats. It was just so brutal. Like, it was taking such an obscene amount of time to get through the cats that I just had to make a judgment call and start grouping them for the sake of time, because we were meeting weekly, and yeah, nobody wanted to spend 3 Fridays in a row just doing straight combat waiting for cats. But, and then I had one player, it wasn't even the guy with the cats. I'm not going to mention names in this, by the way, because that would be fucking stupid of me, but he was getting mad at me for not following the rules, and at me grouping up the cats in the groups of 10. It might have been groups of 5, I can't remember if it was groups of 5 or 10, but he was getting mad at me for circumventing the issue. And it's like, dude, everyone at the table was agreeing. Except you didn't open your mouth. But it's like, nobody wanted to spend 3 Fridays rolling for cats. We had like maybe 3 hours every Friday/Saturday to get a D&D session out. And nobody wants to spend all that time rolling for cats. You get what I'm saying? But then I had a player getting mad later, and it's like, bro, what do you want me to do? There's not much I can do here. players are agreeing, I'm agreeing, right? Like, what you want me to do? And then that's not even the best thing. Another annoying thing as a DM, or not even as a DM, as just trying to catch other players up. Like, listen, if you run a group that tries to keep their continuity connected, or even just a loose multiverse scenario, it is fucking hell keeping all the fucking notes consistent. You will fuck up details, you will derail details, you will make assumptions just so you're not stalling. You know, just so you're not breaking up the table, so to speak. Don't do that. Like, if you need to take 5 seconds to look at your notes, please do it. For the sake of your players and yourself. Just do it. Like, no cap. Do it. Please. But it's just like, it gets to the point where you've carried people over so much and you just lose detail. Like, I didn't even want to run a full, like, continuity. I wanted to run a loose multiverse, like, loose dimensions things. And think of it like Dragon Ball. The continuity is whatever the fuck we need from the moment kind of deal, right? Like, I want it to be loose, want it to be one-shots. But it's like, from each one-shot in that adventure with these characters, it got to the point where I was just pulling characters out of other stuff to fill in content. It was completely homebrewed shit, so that didn't help me either. Like, I literally needed to come up with all the details as was, and that did not help. But it got to a point where we go back to the Icewind Dale, first campaign I ever did. We had a player who wasn't in that campaign. We had 2 players, actually. But me and 2 other guys were. So we get back to the Icewind Dale doing this one-shot, loose campaign thing. You know... So we get to the Icewind Dale, and I pull that adventuring party, like, you know, back into the fold. I bring them into the story, and we have the half-orc, actually, Zadara. That's the name of the character. And there was a detail with Zadara, the character, and actually the other character, Lila, the wood elf, that I didn't get right. And essentially, during the whole Icewind Dale campaign, basically, for like the 15 sessions we might have did from that, I was under the pretext, I was under the illusion, I was under the context of my character was the only one backstory-wise, not campaign-wise, because obviously, you know, once you get into the campaign story, you get into the campaign story. But, you know, backstory you can interpret yourself, you know, Phil, and it just needs to be related somehow. It needs to make sense for what you're doing. You feel? It needs to make sense for the character, too. But I was under the illusion that my character was the only one, backstory-wise, who had a grudge against the Ice Maiden, Ariel. That wasn't the case. So when I pull the adventuring party back as a callback for this one-shot, because we were in the Icewind Dale, I'm explaining later to the one member who wasn't there, even though we had 2. It was only one member who needed explaining to. You know, like who Zadara and Lila was, out of the, like, 3. I explained my character, Lila, Zadara, blah, blah, blah. And then I basically explained my character was the only one backstory-wise with a direct grudge against the Ice Maiden. I got that wrong so severely it wasn't funny. It wasn't a fault of mine. It's just that we never got to it in gameplay or roleplay because, well, lasted 15 sessions. So, you know, when you fuck up. You don't know of things. And that's the thing, too. If you don't get to it in gameplay and you want to pull these people in, you're fucked. Because you just don't know it, because you never got to it in the campaign. You never got to it in the roleplay. You just didn't get to it. Which is horrible. Because I'm explaining, in a public server, mind you, I'm explaining this to this person. And then the owner of that character comes in and is like, dude, you got so much wrong. And I'm like, what? But this is all that was ever expressed throughout, you know, the Icewind Dale campaign for what sessions we had. That's all we established, but he's like, yeah, dude, look at all this. And then he literally shows me the notes on the character, and I'm like, oh. Yeah, I just felt bad. Because I got so much wrong with that character, it wasn't even funny. And it's all because we never got to it. So, if you're not screwing up the details that you have, You have details that you just don't have, which is bad. Which is really bad when, you know, campaigns don't go all the way through, and then you want to pull legacy characters out. Because you have details that people have written down, but you never got to them. And unfortunately, these character things were core to how the character acts and behaves and its motivations. Yeah, that was really bad. That was bad. And then I'll never forget my first dispute with the DM. This was in the Icewind Dale campaign. I don't know what it was or how this happened. Like, I really don't know how this happened. But I was making my first character ever. You know, it was that classic, that tiefling, man. The edgy tiefling. The ubiquitous the first player character. The edgy tiefling. I mean, it was a druid, so it was a little less edgy. It was still edgy, though. But anyway, so I didn't know much, obviously, about tieflings. This was my first D&D playthrough. And I don't know if the DM screwed up initially when making the character, explaining this to me or what. I don't know how this happened, how this got into my brain. But I was under the impression that tieflings were normally like 4 feet-ish tall and lived for like 200 years. I don't know where this happened. I don't know if it was me reading something that I shouldn't have read, or if I don't know if it was the DM completely screwing up explaining this to me because it was my first time through. I don't know where those details got in my brain from. But yeah, so I make this tiefling to be, in my image, you know, different then. Because how the DM was explaining it at the time, at least to my memory, yeah, he was describing tieflings as gritty, old bastards, you know. You know, giving them the old bastard treatment, so to speak. And so I'm just getting this image of this short, evil bastard character. So I'm like, okay, what if we make him like 25 instead? Make him like 6 feet tall. Well, 5'9", 5'10". Make him female instead of the old dirty bastard treatment. Yeah, that didn't go over well when we initially got in, because I thought I had the super, unique tiefling that wasn't like anyone else's, and it turns out I just had a super common tiefling, because I got swindled with character details. Well, with race details. Species details, but in D&D it's called race. Yeah, I just wanted to throttle my DM after that. I just wanted to throttle my dungeon master so bad, man. Like, you don't know the urge of wanting to rip a man's spine out of his back until he basically tells you the complete opposite of how a race operates, or makes you read up something or the complete opposite of how a race operates in D&D. Oh boy. I still like that character this day, like, despite the fact that it's just an average tiefling. But it's like, bro, why'd you describe him as like 4 feet tall and can live to like 300 years old or whatever the fuck? Oh yeah, and there was another thing, actually. I don't know why I thought so many races and species were shorter than they were. I used to think elves were only like 5 feet at max, but it turns out they can grow to like a full 6 foot in game. What the fuck? Why? Why the tall boys? I can't have my short boy. That's a shitpost. Well, the story is true. I used to think that. Then someone else pointed it out. And then you got a famous sin. Stats, man. Between your weapons, your armor, your spells, your actual initial character stats, the stats of the enemies. Thankfully, if you're just a player, you really don't have to worry about that, unless you're trying to figure out what their armor class is. But it's just like, oh boy, man. As a dungeon master, keeping stats consistent is easy, but it's also very easy to forget them. You know, you'll just be in the grind, you'll be in the movement, you'll be going, and then before you know it, 17 times in a row you've said this thing has an AC of 17 when it only had an AC of 15. That's a random example, but it's like, I've seen it happen so many times. Not exactly 17 for 15 for AC, but just so many times where you're getting in the flow and then you swap the stats for something else. Glorious. Glorious. Or then all the times you have to make judgment calls on the rules. Oh, those are horrible, man. You see, the worst part about Dungeons and Dragons is it's very much interpretation based too. We have a set rule book that you're supposed to follow for all editions. But here's the thing. Just like with the cats at the beginning of the video, as my lead off into this, you will just be put into times where you have to make judgment calls on gameplay too. Just not even the rules, not even the mathematicians parts. You'll just have to make judgment calls on how the base gameplay operates. My favorite dispute with this was the campaign where I had the Ebronese Orc. Okay, this is the campaign with the Ebronese Orc. And this is, I can't remember if it was me or somebody else. I really can't. You think I would remember if it was something I would do, but I can't for the life of me remember if it was me or somebody else. But one of us, we just had this annoying enemy. And one of us said, yo, I got a fuck ton of javelins. What do I need to roll for strength or whatever just to arc all these javelins at once into this bitch? You know, just, you know, tie them up into a knot. I can't remember. It was like 7 or 8 javelins. You know, he tied them together, chuck them all at once like a giant ass pin cushion basically at an enemy. Well, those are the pins. You're the cushion. I don't remember if it hit or not, but the poor DM, like, we had a full-scale debate over if this was even allowed. And, you know, there's not a ruling on this. So, you know, the poor DM just had to sit there and be like, okay. And just go from there. You know, you had to tell him, okay, you have to spend this much time tying it together. You have to spend this much time making sure... I can't remember all the steps that were involved in this. But it was just fucked. So he had to make a judgment call in the gameplay, and it was just horrible for that DM. It was horrible for the DM. Because we were all arguing, all debating on how this would go. Like, what's the functionality? You know, how much do you need to roll for strength in addition to your hit for it to land effectively? Like, aerodynamics, can you even get enough force behind that for it to be effective? And I get that's what the damage roll is meant for. But it's like, it's just so fucked. Yeah, like, we know that's what the damage roll is meant for. But the thing is, you have to get it there. You know? And rolling, I can't remember if it was dexterity or, not dexterity, sleight of hand, I think it was. The DM had him roll for, you know, tying all the javelins together for that, pin thrower, basically, you know? For the giant old, woo, wee woo pin throw. Like, he had to roll for strength along with the to hit. And I don't blame the DM there, you know? You're in a really fucking precarious situation with this. You're having 8 javelins going at one enemy. You know, you gotta do what you gotta do to make this feasible and logical. You gotta make judgment calls on the gameplay, and those are the breaks. The rulebook doesn't cover you in every single instance, and that is just fucked. Like, listen, obviously you don't expect the rulebook to cover everything. But there are just so many situations that either you, the DM, wants to lead the party into, or the party themselves or the individual player themselves wants to do. And then you're just stuck sitting there like, okay, how do we go about this? Then you gotta pull up your references, what view you can in those moments, and it's just like, here we go. It's not even the most ridiculous thing. Like, I did a super fucked thing once. I basically had a giant goose attack my players, and this will be the last story. I had a giant goose, like this, 80-foot tall honking goose just come out of the woods and attack my players. It was funny. I loved it. It was the best gag ever. I had them going on a monster hunt. They were hearing crashes, booms, loud footsteps. They were going on the super, like, you know, tense hunt. And then all of a sudden, it's just a giant goose. I loved it. But that's not the big thing. The big thing with that is I didn't stop and think about the fact that the players would be climbing up that fucker to try to kill him. I didn't think about that. You know, I just thought they would be throwing generic ass attacks at it, like, oh fuck man, what do we do? No, they were actually thinking. They were actually thinking, and I wasn't prepared for it. So they start climbing up the fucker. And that's when it all goes out, because then I have to account for the fact that the goose is moving, the fact that they are trying to cast spells and do attacks while climbing up. It was just fucked. It basically turned into Shadow of the Colossus. I don't know what I expected by going that route, but it basically just turned into Shadow of the Colossus. Yikes. And let me tell you, doing the mathematics and the rule judgment and the judgment calls on Shadow of the Colossus D&D is not fun. And I don't recommend it. But anyway, guys, it's been 25 minutes of me talking about Dungeons and Dragons and bad experiences with it. This video is gonna get no views, but I actually legitimately enjoyed just doing this rant. It's when we do these rants that we just have the best quality content. We just have, you know, casual music videos on. It's just the best. You know, and then we're gonna have that copyright-free music on below so I don't get bit in the ass. It's the best. And it's not gonna sync up at all to what's been on the side. Anyway, I have been Johnny Von Duke, and if you somehow enjoyed this rant, I need you to roll for initiative, and I need it to be taken away by the other me. Woo. Yeah, I hope you all enjoyed the video. It's pretty much a nothing burger, but if you've been watching my channel for all 8 years that it's existed, you should know that's kind of what we do here. Anyway, if you somehow found yourself enjoying it, click over here to watch another video, click over here to watch another degenerate video, click here to subscribe to my channel, then click down there for, well, whatever lazy lack of originality content I put there. Anyway, get the fuck out of here, you filthy animal. Goodbye.